My guest today is Philippa Games. Thanks for coming and talking to us on Tools of the Podcast, right, Philippa?
Yes, good morning.
Yes. All right. So before we get into what you do, could you tell us who is Philippa Games?
Well, I'm an expat Brit living in California for quite a few years now, but I think I still talk like a Brit, hopefully.
Mhm.
So, and I'm a digital analytics and strategy consultant, which sounds terribly scary, but hopefully we'll have a good chat and it won't be too bad. I help people make really good business decisions and transformational changes to their websites and their online businesses, you know, based on me helping them to understand what the analytics are telling them, without the analytics therefore being overwhelming.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you. So, I we talk about analytics in podcasting quite a bit, and a lot of podcasters are really obsessed with them. But but I want you to explain to us, why are analytics important in running a business?
Because if you don't know what's going on, you're basically shooting in the dark. With everything that you're putting into your business and your website and your marketing and the whole thing. I mean, I have people saying to me, well, but I know that I'm doing okay because I get some sales. And usually my answer to that is yes, but wouldn't you like to A, make more sales? And wouldn't you like to know what you're doing is effective and where it's not effective? And analytics can tell us a lot about how to improve the experience that we provide, to our listeners, our customers. For example, I'm sure you talk about this a lot, maybe, but how much of each of the podcasts that you make do people listen to?
Right.
I know that I have clients where you these days now you can measure that. You can measure how much of a podcast they listen to. You can measure how much of a video they watch. And I've seen a lot of businesses where they, for example, spend a ton of money on making really good video, and half the audience drops off in the first 30 seconds. And it's really bad to see.
Yes.
But it's partly because the person doing the introduction says, hello, my name is, and I'm blah, 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 and this and and it's incredibly boring. And the videos that are successful, and I'm hoping that, podcasts as well, are the ones that really start out by saying, you should listen to this, you should watch this, because you're going to learn this, and this, and it's going to be worth your while. And
Yeah.
get a really good hook in, get some really good interest in at the front end so that people carry on. Because the thing I love about analytics is that they can't lie. So I can say to the client, look, this approach that you have isn't working, and here's the proof.
Yeah. Yeah. I understand that the numbers don't lie, right? As accountants like to say. And I can see how helpful that is, especially somewhere like if you have a YouTube channel in our space, and you go in and looking on the analytics, because you have thousands of subscribers, but then you look, they're not really
Right.
consuming your stuff. So that could be a wake up call or some learning moments, right?
Yeah, and the point of that is that doesn't mean your stuff is bad. It means think about how you're presenting it. And as I said, give people a really good reason to listen.
Right.
Start out with something really interesting or exciting, and don't start out with blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Right. Because the analytics will immediately start to tell you whether or not that's working.
Yes.
I mean, some people are going to drop off, right? And you can't obsess about that. Some
Right.
people are going to go, you know what, this isn't for me. That's fine. You don't need them anyway. Okay. But for the people that you would like to get interested, to get engaged with what you're doing, it really helps you to optimize how you're communicating with them.
Right. Understood. Now, is it a hard sell when you're working with entrepreneurs? Because I think an established business may understand this, right? A guy with an MBA who starts a business understand the numbers, and that the numbers matter. An entrepreneur who's gung ho and running their business, how difficult is it to reach those of us who are in that creative mode?
Well, honestly, if the business owner is being intelligent, then it shouldn't be difficult because the argument doesn't change. It doesn't matter how old the business is. Circumstances change, markets change,
Mm,
um, products change, new competitors come along. Right? There's always something happening, and you
yes,
can always do better than you're doing today.
yes,
Hopefully. I mean, unless you're at absolute capacity, you don't need to ever do marketing again because you can't handle the business you've got, which would be lovely. But
right,
most of us aren't in that position. Um, so being able to look at what's happening and saying, this is what's working, this is what's not working, this is the content people like, this is the content people don't like, this is the marketing that works for me, this is the marketing that doesn't work for me. There's really no reason why you'd ever want to stop doing that, in my opinion.
that's true. Yeah. Okay, I appreciate that. Okay, so can you give us three examples where analytics can help someone to boost their sale or increase their influence?
So I think one we've already discussed, which
Mm,
is how much of what you're producing do people consume, and
yes.
where do they fall off, so that you can see what's potentially not working about your content.
Hmm.
Another one that's an absolute goldmine: if you have a ton of content on your website. So I'm assuming that since your audience are podcasters, content's important.
Yes.
Okay, so a couple of things about that. One, I see a lot of podcast websites where basically you upload the latest episode. So the latest episode is at the top of the page, and then all the other episodes from last week and the week before and the week before that start moving down the page. So in analytics, we can measure how far down a page people scroll.
Hmm.
Because one of the things that really bothers me about this, that I see a lot, is, a podcast that you recorded maybe a month ago, 6 weeks ago, right? That's not very long ago. Probably it's still really good content. But
Yes.
as it moves down the page, fewer and fewer people see it. So most podcast site owners, in my opinion, don't continue to leverage the content that they had before. It's always about the latest, newest podcast, which is a real shame,
Hmm.
because it ought to be possible to continue to promote and leverage and get people coming back to some of your older content. I mean, with one of my clients, we actually she has a podcast in on the topic of effective management, and we broke it up into different kind of categories, so that and then the next thing is you can search, right? So
Yes.
you can see how far down a page people scroll. You can see which podcasts are even still attracting any attention. You can make those easier to find by using categories and so on. And then there's search. So you should have a search engine on your site.
Hmm.
And obviously you can tag each episode with hashtags of keywords of the topic for that episode.
Right.
Um, but you can also allow people to type things into your search engine. So we're not talking about Google here. We're talking about the search
Mhm.
engine that's on your site.
Yes.
And looking at what people type into that, which you can do, can be an absolute goldmine of ideas for new topics, new content. And this is not only for podcasts. This applies, for example, if you're selling products or
Right.
services. What it tells you is what people expect to find from you and your business when they
Yeah.
come to your website. And that can be really, really helpful because it tells you, like, what words do people use to describe what they think you have, which
Mm.
may be different from the words that you have. And we all work in industries where there's a ton of jargon, right?
Yes.
And so a really important question is, do people understand your jargon? um,
Mm.
because if you're working in an industry where there's a lot of technical language, um, that you understand because you're immersed in it, but actually your target market doesn't use those words. I mean, healthcare obviously is one, accountancy is another, right? Those kind of businesses. Obviously,
Right.
any kind of technology business.
Hmm.
Um, what words do people use to find you and find your staff? And because you need to have content using those kind of words, what are the lay terms that people use if they don't know the exact wording?
Right.
And it can also give you great ideas for new products, new services, new topics. If people are looking for stuff that you don't currently provide, but is within your area of expertise, then,
Right.
those are great ideas for things that you could develop.
Yes, for sure. And I can see how if your analytics isn't matching what your thought process is, it could be because people don't understand your content, right? And by you looking at those search words, that helps you to focus on really what they're looking for or
Yeah,
calibrate your content to match those. Yeah,
yeah,
I can see that.
absolutely. No, it's, the point is, it's not to beat yourself up.
Right.
It's to get insights into what's actually happening. And then, I mean, figure out the other part of obviously is figure out what to do about it. Which one of the things I like about doing a lot of analytics is that it's very geeky. I mean, I am kind of geeky, right? Because it is very data driven, but it's also creative because then you have to come up with okay, now what do I do?
Yes.
So which I also try to work with my clients on. It's not just a question of saying, okay, here's your problem, buddy, and then go away.
Right.
So
Yeah. Okay, so on that note, could you tell us what you do for your clients and how we could get in touch with you?
thank you. Yes, I mean, this is what I do,
Yeah.
right? I help you to look at either if you don't have analytics already on your website, I can help
Hmm.
you. I work with Google Analytics mostly, but there are other tools can help you get that set up. And then if you already have it, I mean, it can be extremely overwhelming when you look at it. It's got a very difficult to use interface, to be honest, if you're not
Hmm.
used to it. Um, and there's an awful lot of data. So I help people get through that and find out what they really need to know. My favorite client question is not, can you give me 50 pages of analytics reports? I'm very unlikely to do that. It's much more, can you tell me what I need to know to run my business better?
Yes.
And that's really what it's about. Let me figure out all the geek stuff and tell you what you need to know in business terms to move ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And I notice you have a giveaway. What is that giveaway? Like a freebie on
So
it?
yeah, I'm actually, a lot of people shy away from analytics because it's so complicated and
Hmm.
overwhelming and data and boring and which I understand. But as I hope I've tried to tell you a few ideas, and I do have actual stories of changes that people have made to their websites and their business based on numbers. And so I have a hidden gems book. It's on my website. It's 5 stories in English, no technology, um, of things that we found from actual websites in different industries, some B2B, some B2C, the changes that we made, so that the idea is to give people some ideas, because you could read these stories and go, that could be happening to me,
Hmm.
right? Explain what the problem is and what we did about it. And I'm just trying to inspire people to maybe take another look at the analytics or give it a go.
Right. Yeah, understood. And could you share one of those case studies with us?
Um, well, uh, okay, one of them is about jargon. So Um, I actually worked with a well-known motorcycle company,
Mhm.
and this was a little while ago, but the motorcycle company had a program um, that their dealerships ran, and it was called Rider's Edge, sorry. And so on their websites, they had a link that said Rider's Edge, and not that many people typically would click on those links
Hmm.
in the menu, right? So you go to the
Right.
homepage, there's a menu, it's got different options, and one of them is Rider's Edge. And I said to them, for people who want to learn to ride a motorbike, they're probably pretty new to the whole thing. And Rider's Edge, to me, sounds kind of advanced, right? It doesn't really say this is a program for beginners.
Hmm.
Even though it's their name for the program, it doesn't, to me, necessarily immediately speak to somebody who might be a target audience for it, right? And I
Right.
said, why don't you make the link say something like learn to ride? Much more straightforward, much simpler,
Mm-hmm.
right? Click on that, and then it can say, our program to teach you to ride a motorbike is called Rider's Edge. And that's where
Right.
you can introduce, your industry term for that.
Wow. Yeah.
And this was a little while ago, but for a while I would go to dealership websites and there'd be a link that said learn to ride, and it would be like, oh, that's something I had something to do with, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, yeah, that's really neat. Yeah, I can see that. I can really see that even someone who's I'm from a finance background, so I understand the numbers and the analytics thing. But I think if we can bring it more mainstream in business, it would really help us to do better in our business, because it's not just about the front facing, talk. It's a lot about the back end, isn't it?
The thing is, you really have to understand your customers. You have to understand how they think. And you
Yes.
have to understand that when they come to your website, the most visitors are not going to do a whole load of work to find something if it's not
Yeah.
immediately obvious. And that's the point.
Yes.
So that's the point of that story.
Yes. I agree. All right. So, what is Philippa grateful for today?
What am I grateful for today? Well, for the first time in 4.5 years, I got COVID,
Oh,
and I thought for a minute I might be immune, but I'm extremely grateful to be feeling a whole lot better.
okay. Well, I'm glad for that.
It wasn't too bad,
Yeah.
luckily.
Okay. Thank you for sharing, and I hope you feel better soon.
No, I
Yeah.
do. That's what I'm
Okay.
grateful
All
for. Yeah.
right. Thanks. All right. So before I let you go, could you give one or two tips to a podcaster who, if you were talking to a podcaster right now as a client, just give them one or two tips
from
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 your,
my field
yes.
is get serious about those numbers. Really find um, understand your audience, understand what of your content your audience really wants to know more of, so that you can leverage that. Understand how to best communicate it to them. So look at those content engagement numbers, and think about how to continue to leverage some of your older content, because it's still really good stuff. And the more content you can leverage, the more traction you're going to continue to have in search engines and with your
Yes.
audience.
Okay. Thank you very much, Philippa Games, for coming and talking to us today. I'll also put a link to your website in the show notes when we publish this, so people can also see those 5 tips that you gave as well. And
It's a little ebook. You
yes,
can go there and download it. It's absolutely free. So enjoy.
awesome. Thank you very much. I appreciate you.
Thank you. You too.